First of all, let me just say it's a great paper, and so it's a great foundational document, I think, for other people to take and build on. And it's a great reference document because it's got a lot of really meaty stuff in it. And I think all of us, if we're going to look at this particular subject, particularly as Henry suggested, as sort of a poster child to what could happen if it really happened, you have to start with foundational data. And I think it's very useful for that purpose. So again, kudos to both Alexa and Jessica for what they've done. The second point is, coming back to Henry's comment, I think there's potential here with this theme that the paper tries to wrap itself around, but there's also great danger. With the promises that have been made and the suggestions that are in this paper, the question is, what happens if it fails? And when it fails, the question is going to be, how does it fail, and how badly does it fail, and what lessons are learned from the failure? We could very well end up, net-net, with this failure reinforcing everyone's, or a good number of people's, attitude is, this is a completely impractical approach to baseload power and stability in a given country. The Koreans could take that, the Japanese could take that lesson, and it could be learned a lot of other places. And so I think there is the real risk of failure in this particular approach that has been taken in Taiwan. The first issue that I'd like to address is actually was raised by Alexa, I think, in her remarks right now, was the fact that this nuclear power industry in Taiwan, and indeed the entire nuclear future, is highly politicized. In fact, it's been politicized for the last 15 to 20 years. And to understand the degree of politicization, it's being, of course, manipulated by both the KMT party and the party that's in power right now, and will probably continue to be through the balance of this president's first term. One need look no farther than a project called NPP4, which began some 15, 20 years ago and has now been through 4 administrations and has been a political football all the way through. Billions of dollars wasted, a political football over, again, 4 different political administrations, and it continues to be, to this day, a probably, I'm guessing, $16, $17 billion project in which the Taiwanese finally announced last week they're shipping the fuel rods back to the United States because the power plant can never be operated. In point of fact, the power plant could never be operated the way it was built. We were just talking at the table here. I said it would be a great opportunity for somebody to write an MBA thesis about, because it is a situation in which everybody possibly did everything they could do wrong to build a nuclear power plant, and 4 different administrations used it in the way that they did to lie past the graveyard, whistling past the graveyard, if you will. So it's finally become what it is today, a huge failure, and the failure is probably not well understood. But in addition to Fukushima, mentioned as sort of a touch point, if you will, for the anti-nuclear sentiment in Taiwan, NPP4 played its own role independent of Fukushima, because what it did is undercut any political support, popular support, the body politic support for nuclear power. It basically regarded it as unregulated, uncontrolled, and politically inept. So again, Taiwan's nuclear past, again, its current form, if we to take those as predictors, I think it's very possible that the Taiwan zero nuke experiment will fail. And it'll fail because the current government, just as the past 3 governments, is continuing to not tell the truth about what Taiwan's true energy needs are and what its capabilities are. The specific examples, a couple that were used, I think, in Alexa's presentation and again are in the paper. In one case, they identify Taipower, which is, of course, the national utility, the government-owned utility, which is responsible for the production, the generation of power, transmission of power, delivery of power, is probably the best case we have of a national utility being used for political purposes, charging less than it should charge for the usage of the power, and as a result losing tens of millions of dollars a year and delivering a completely, let's say, bogus market-style delivery of power to the people in the country. What all this has done is brought Taiwan to the situation it is right now. As of today, actually yesterday, the statistics, Taiwan has a strategic reserve capacity of about 4%. One power plant goes down, and they're working them all to the hilt. You're going to have brownouts across the country, just like you've had in the past. Industry is going to use confidence in the country's ability to provide electricity, and they're going to make decisions about whether they build their next semiconductor plant in Taiwan, or move it to mainland China, or build it in Texas. And that's exactly what's happening in Taiwan today. People are making business decisions based on whether this country and its government can deliver electric power in a predictable and dependable manner. And as I say, the jury is out. The goal of zero nuke by 2025, I think, is obtainable, but at what price? You can always shut down the nuclear power plants, but you're going to have to replace them with something. And you're not going to replace them with renewables. Frankly, renewables are let's say an illusion, if you will. Yesterday, the 18 solar power plants delivered zero electricity. Yesterday, the 23 windmill power plants delivered less than 0.1% of Taiwan's requirements. There is no dependability, nor is there any prognosis in the future that renewables will work. And they simply will not work because Taiwan is a horrible place to depend on either one of those methods of generation for baseload power. Last week, we were in Taiwan, had a discussion with the Deputy Minister of Economy and Industry, the man that's responsible for running the power industry and telling us how they're going to meet this 2025 goal. And his answer was, well, 4% reserve capacity isn't bad as long as we have only two nuclear power plants offline. We have 4 online. So therefore, with 4 nuclear power plants online functioning at 99% capacity, we're down to 4% reserve power. But don't worry, we can soldier through. That begs the question, if you've got 4 nuclear power plants out of 6, 4 out of 6 units, at 99% capacity, how do you think you're going to get to zero nuclear in 2025 with those power plants supplying 32% of your electricity offline? So there was sort of a reality check there, but the party line, excuse me, is don't worry, we're going to meet the 2025 goal. So the question becomes, what's reality? Assuming a non-nuclear Taiwan in 2025, LNG is not going to be able to deliver what they need to deliver by that time. The only answer probably will be an increase in coal capacity, no choice there, and a hope that somewhere beyond 2025 they'll get that 3rd LNG terminal online and maybe the 4th. LNG is great, it's wonderful, but you have to have a terminal to bring it through, and you have to have the storage capacity to store what you bring in. Right now, there's probably very little hope that they can have either the 3rd terminal or the 4th terminal online by 2025. So there's a reality check here for all of us. I think the paper lays down and points us in a direction here on each one of these topics, be it renewables, be it LNG, and be it the nuclear, non-nuclear future. For Henry purposes and for all of our purposes, I would love to see a 2025 game plan that would actually work. Right now, the plan that's being activated or acted upon is, I think, totally unrealistic. And the politician that stands up and says for the first time, this will not work, we have to make other options available and figure out what we're going to do for the future, is probably going to be the politician that is not elected, but at least he'll be a truth teller. And it may, in fact, include Taiwan Semiconductor to build its new plant in Taiwan rather than moving it to Texas. So I think, to me, the paper is extremely valuable in laying down that baseline. And what I would do is run scenarios against that and see how realistic it is to take those 6 nuclear units offline in a reasonable time frame not 2025. If it's 2030, if it's 2032, to me that's a much better approach, and it also has a less risk of destroying the credibility of a no nuke by 2025 scenario. End of comment.